Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's panel discussion, where we discuss pension and retirement planning and explore the question, are you underpensioned? Thank you for taking the time to join us, particularly as there are so many other things happening this evening. Your presence here demonstrates that this is a matter of some importance to you, and I dare say your time won't be wasted. My name is Samantha Lizama, and I'm a part of the external communications team with Sagicor, and I'll be your moderator for this evening's discussion, for which we have set aside about 45 minutes for in-depth discourse with our panel, leaving 15 minutes or so for you, our audience, to ask any questions. You may drop your questions at any time during the discussion in the chat or via the Q&A feature. Please be mindful, though, that this is a public discussion at which all questions and comments are welcome, but we ask that you are respectful to all the members of our panel and to the audience. So with that in mind, and given the time frame that we have, let's get into it. It's my pleasure to introduce this evening's panel, which represents a cross-section of Sagicor's expertise. And given the nature of the subject, we're also delighted to have on the panel a representative from our National Insurance Board. So from Sagicor, I'd like to introduce Mr. James Camacho, the Vice President of Pensions. James brings with him over 20 years of experience in the insurance industry. We also have Ms. Susan Mendez, Pensions Administrator with 17 years experience in the Pensions Department. And to round off the Sagicor team, we have Assistant Vice President in Portfolio Management and Operations, Mrs. Leandra Sanka-Cassie, whose expertise lies in investment management, an area in which she has worked in for 15 years. Rounding off our panel this evening is Mr. Andy Edwards, currently the Acting Chief Operating Officer at the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago. One of his key roles is stakeholder engagement on pension reform related to the sustainability of social insurance in Trinidad and Tobago. Panelists, good evening to you, and thank you for taking the time to join us. So, we have our topic in view. Are you underpensioned? Now, let me start by saying I'm no financial expert. My area is communications, but I did do some research and preparation and found out that being underpensioned essentially means that you're behind when it comes to planning and preparing financially for your retirement. So I take that to mean that I'm not saving or investing or doing enough in order to afford the lifestyle that I would like to have once I stop working and I may not be earning the same salary. That's quite a scary thought, one that a person may not want to spend some time on. But as I said, I'm not really the expert. So Andy, I'd like to hear from you first. From your experience, what does it mean to say that someone is underpensioned?
Good afternoon or good evening to everybody, the panel, as well as the viewing audience. My privilege to be here to talk to you on this, I think, very important topic. Samantha, I think you did an excellent job in laying out exactly what it means to be under pension. So what I can add to it, to this very important topic, to let you know that as well, that being under pensioned, the good thing about it is that you can determine whether you're under pension before you reach retirement age. And that's the ideal, that you understand whether you're under pension before and not get there and then realize that you're under pension. If I were to give a threshold, then I would say that anybody who is earning a salary and earning a salary over $9,000 in Trinidad and Tobago, if you have not made any plans for retirement, then you are under pension. And I'm saying that from the perspective that in the national insurance system, of course, everybody knows that we have a minimum pension of $3,000. And most people access that at age 60. And then at age 65, if you have no other income but the national insurance, then you are entitled to about $2,500 of senior citizens pension. And so at age 65, you have, without doing anything, persons can access $5,500 of pension under the umbrella of Social Security in Trinidad and Tobago. And so that's what I'm saying. That's what I said. If you're earning maybe $9,000 or less, then maybe that might be good for you because because those social insurance systems, social security systems, seek to provide for those who are most vulnerable. But if you are over about $9,000 of income and you are salaried, then that replacement will not be enough for you, and you are under pension, and you will have to make find ways in order to fill that gap and to make sure that the scary situation that you highlighted earlier does not in fact take place in your life.
Right, right. Thank you very much for that very clear, and especially when it comes to Trinidad and Tobago, you set the stage for us quite well. Leandra, I want to send the same question to you. When you hear under pension, from your point of view, what comes to mind? And also tell us, why do you think this is a discussion worth having?
Thanks, Samantha. Good afternoon to the listening viewers. So like Andy said, and I think he hit the nail on the head. So being under pension really means not being able to maintain the lifestyle you're accustomed to during your working years when you retire. So simply put, I had a simple example where I say, let's say you're earning $7,000 a month, and then you retire and you realize you have to live off of $3,500. This is a reality that many people do not understand. And I'm so glad that we are having this discussion today, because being under pension is one thing, but we need to start to understand how we fix it. Because, for example, a company pays pension plans only supplement a small part of our income. And as Andy said, you have the social security side, the national insurance, and then old age pension. But in order to live with this reality, you have to start investing and finding other streams of income to sustain the lifestyle you want in retirement, understanding you would have different needs in that stage of your life.
Okay, thank you very much, Leandra. Suzanne, as a manager in the pensions department, I'm sure you've had these types of conversations around pensions time and time again with clients, potential clients, and individuals in general. When it comes to pension planning, are people generally prepared from your point of view? And what is your advice, or better yet, how are you able to show your clients and others the importance of being adequately prepared?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Samantha, for that question. From my experience, when I see clients, I think most persons are not really ready for retirement. They don't plan ahead of time, and sometimes we have to keep it real. And when I go to see clients, I usually talk to them about, again, the lifestyle they would want to have after retirement. So when you think about retirement planning, we have to remember this is our responsibility, and we have to be able to fund the income that we want to receive when we retire. So it's like anyone who goes out there and have to work on their own, and they are the ones bringing in the income. When you're planning for your retirement, you think about where you want to be, what do you want to do, how much money do I want to get at the end of the month, what are my expenses going to be. So we think about those things. So I try to bring real life experiences when I see clients, and I tell them, you need to be prepared.
Right.
You need to prepare for your retirement, and it's your responsibility. And I'm very happy that Sagicor took this initiative where we start to educate the public about retirement, all right, and what you need to do to be able to retire, and an income that would provide you with the necessities that you may need after retirement. You would no longer have a monthly income coming in or salary coming in, and therefore you have to look for other sources of income. The national insurance is one source of income at retirement. So we are thinking along those lines. What are you going to do for your retirement planning? And therefore you should think along those lines as to where you want to go.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. I mean, just in this little introduction alone, you all have suggested so many things that I think are important to take a note of, particularly that, there are a lot of different ways that one can approach retirement planning, and that there are a lot of different areas that one can look at from the Social Security perspective, but also in terms of what organizations like Sagicor and others would bring as well. So now, James, I would like to bring you into the discussion. You engage with more group pension clients, which means that these pension plans are set up by companies to benefit their employees. Even though companies put such provisions in place, is it fair to say that individuals should still, where they can, opt to ensure they find ways to augment their employer-led plans? And what are some of the options do they have?
Good afternoon, everyone. I mean, as mentioned previously by the other speakers, being under pension really means that when you retire, you wouldn't have enough income in place or wealth in place to maintain your standard of living. Okay, so the NIS will give you, NIS is basically first tier of your pension planning. The second tier is a group pension plan. And I certainly will recommend that anyone who has the opportunity to join a group pension plan do so. Firstly, because the company will contribute on your behalf as well. So it's not just your savings, but if they contribute the same amount as you, your income, the savings will double, basically, based on what the plan rules allow. And some pension plans are actually voluntary. And some members, especially in the 20s and 30s, opt not to join. I will certainly recommend and encourage them to join the pension plan as early as possible and get the benefit of their savings and also that of the company. The next tier of retirement planning is deferred annuities. So after you have your NIS pension, your pension plan, pension from your pension plan, the next step is investing in yourself, in some kind of an annuity, whereby you'll build up savings and build up an accumulation of wealth for the future. Keeping in mind as well that both the pension plan and these annuities are tax deductible or give you some tax relief from your income. Up to $50,000, I believe, or so that not only do you benefit from the company contributing on your behalf, you also benefit from paying less taxes as well for those who are over the personal allowance limit. So there are a lot of benefits in being a member of a pension plan and contributing towards a deferred annuity. I suppose the fourth level of savings is what Leandro may have indicated, that you have to invest in mutual funds or other types of investments. Okay, I think as well that parents, I think, play an important role in this as well, because the average 20 or 30-year-old is not inclined to think about retirement. That's going to happen in 30 or 40 years. So I think parents, in the 50s and 60s who have 20-year-olds should encourage their children to invest and to save from a very early age. Right? Obviously, the younger you are, the better it is. You will accumulate more wealth, more savings, and have a better retirement.
Okay, thank you. That is interesting what you mentioned about parents encouraging their children to save when they begin working, because that's certainly what happened in my case. And because that, and when you were speaking and you mentioned that a lot of persons in their 20s and 30s were opted sometimes not to join the company's pension plan, I was wondering whether that any one of you guys can answer whether that was something that you found quite frequently, if it happens quite frequently.
Yes, it is. I think persons would think that retirement is far away. When you're 20 years old, you're thinking you have 40-something years to go to retirement, and therefore that can wait. But then very soon thereafter, you're 50, and retirement is very, very close by, and you find yourself struggling now to ensure that you have enough funds at retirement.
Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about another another form of pension planning that I know that a lot of people are speaking about currently, particularly when we talk about our Gen Z and millennial generations. And I'd like to hear from Leandra and then James on this. We're hearing a lot about the pursuit of multiple streams of income. So can we talk, Leandra, can you tell us a little bit about how that can assist in bolstering one's opportunities to, supplement your pension? And then James as well, you can comment.
Well, Samantha, diversification is always key. So multiple sources of income helps in retirement because you cannot afford to put all your eggs in one basket. And therefore you need a varied approach based on your circumstances and needs to supplement your income, as you cannot just rely on the company pension plan, NIS, or having an annuity. As James would have mentioned, there are different levels and multiple streams of income comes in from investing. Right, so and there's different types of investing that contributes to this, and we see it a lot in young people. But James made a key point where, in your 20s, you now start to work. As you're growing up, you want to work, get your own money, and you're not looking towards retirement and thinking about that. So targeting young people in this form of engagement would be one way, and that is, invest in the different streams of income, whether it's saving towards a rent investment property so that you have rental income coming in. That is a stream of income besides your salary, and there are different types of investments that would give you that.
Okay. James, did you have anything to share here?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, one of the ways is to invest in mutual funds. And basically, Sagicor will have a full range of mutual funds depending on your risk appetite. You could invest in an equity mutual fund, which is obviously risky. You could invest in a bonds fund, which is less risky, or you can have a balance fund, which is a mixture of both. Leandra just made a point about encouraging younger people to save to buy their own properties. I certainly did that for my 3 children who are now in their 30s, and each of them would have saved. They started working in their 20s, they're now in their 30s, they saved for 10 years, and they now all purchased their own houses. And at least for the first few years after doing that, each of them would have rented their premises for 2 or 3 years to make back some funds from what they invested in. So I think we need to, as I said, parents need to encourage their children to do these type of things. And it's very important to think, long term rather than short term, because as we said, a 20-year-old is not thinking of retirement, but it will creep up on them eventually.
Right. I think what I'm hearing here as well is that retirement planning and planning for your future financially is not something that you should not consider, and it's not something that you should be afraid of engaging in. You should want to find out and be curious about different ways of earning different types of income and that sort of thing. I'm hearing that reinforced in everything that you guys are saying, and I really appreciate that. So I think we've really gotten the ball rolling in a good way. So I wanted to get into some pointed questions related to the topic. Now, thinking that when anyone starts thinking about pension planning or do I have enough to start planning for my retirement, there's certain questions that come to mind, such as, like, when is the right time to start? I'm hearing you all talking about starting right away in your 20s and 30s, even though it's not something you may think of right away. People will also want to know how will I know how much money is needed? So in short, how should we lay a solid foundation for retirement planning? Andy, would you have some stuff to share here?
Yes. Well, of course, I think you will hear it many times today that the best time to start is early. Right? In our pension planning, maybe I could provide this a sort of a framework that would be able to help us in order to help individuals that might be thinking about, okay, how do I really go about planning for retirement? A good way is to look to see how much income that you currently spend. So you look to see how much income that you currently spend, and let's just say, for argument's sake, you spend about $10,000. I'm just using a number to help us to understand one thing that we can do. So if you recognize that currently we spend about $10,000 of your income, you know that in retirement, we tend to have an increase in terms of your expenditure on health. So I would increase that by about 10 to 20%, all right? And if we go with maybe about $12,000, so you look at your current expenditure, wherever you are at that particular point in time, and you realize how much you spent, and you make an adjustment for health, which might be at 10 to 20%. And then in the example that I'm using, we may come up to about $12,000 of income that you might be required to have at retirement. Now, remember, you're looking at this from your current level of income. And you're saying, well, okay, well, this is not the income that I have when I'm at retirement. But over time, each one of us will have to make an assessment about where we are at any particular point in time. So to take some of the complexity out of it, I'm just looking at it in this way. And then you have to look at the different pillars in social insurance. We call it the multi-pillar system. And James kind of spelled it out in a good way. We're talking about the NIS, talking about the group pension plan that you may have, talking about your further annuities and your savings, and these things add up to provide what you would be able to rely on in retirement. So if you start at the NIS, it's $3,000, right? Your aim, you've already set your target based on your current income over $12,000. Your NIS is $3,000. Then you might look now to go to your employers. If you are in a group pension plan, which we encourage, then you begin to now look to see those plan rules normally have a way in which those things are calculated. All right. So you might be able to get an idea if you work until retirement exactly what type of pension you might be looking at retirement. And then even your financial planners, and I know Sagicor and other insurance companies, if persons have a private pension plan, then they're able to get a projection from these organizations to say, okay, if I contribute a certain amount at a certain interest rate, what might be my projected pension amount? And so you add all these things up, and if you are below the target that I just found, kind of came up with, then you know you're under pension. So if you add your NIS, you get 3,000. You looked at your group pension plan based on the rules, and you go towards retirement, and you see that's 3,000, that's 7. And then you have a private pension plan that is projected to give you $2,000. Then you know that's 9,000. It doesn't give you the up to the 12 that you need. You're under pension, and therefore you need to look for other vehicles in order to meet that target. And then as you settle that, you every few years, or when there's a life change, you get a promotion, something happened, you reassess where you are at that particular point in time, and then you make adjustments in order to ensure that you are able to be adequately covered in retirement. So that's just a kind of a basic practical kind of framework that maybe persons can do in order to get a gauge about whether they are under pension or not.
Okay, thank you so much, Andy, for building out that framework for us a little bit. Leandra, based on what Andy would have mentioned, is there any other approach you may want to add, or anything you wanted to add on to what he said?
Well, basically, I think Andy covered it good, and it's all about planning, right? You need to start to put aside some of your income for investing. So that shortfall from the 9,000 and the 12,000 in Andy's example is a good point. And you look at your goals and your objectives, your liquidity needs at the different stages of your life and your time horizon, and you need to set priorities for retirement. You determine how much risk you're willing to take to guide the options available to you. And in retirement, you have, James would have alluded to it there with the mutual funds, and it all based on your risk appetite, right? But having a diversified portfolio is key. So you could look at, let's say, bonds. They give a fixed rate of return and they pay out every 6 months. That is one stream. We could look at equities. This is riskier, but have higher rewards. And remember, investing for retirement is long term. And we have to be able to stay the course and not worry about market noise too much. Then again, I would have mentioned the real estate option because you get steady rental income. So proper diversification is important here, not just in different asset classes as I would have outlined in bonds and stuff, but really like looking at the different sectors and then the different aspects of the economy. As we know, with investing is volatile, right? So when one might be up, the other one might be down, and having that diversified or balanced approach, it will help you with your retirement. Your retirement savings should be in buckets. It should be, you have short-term, long-term, depending on your goals and needs, and all within your risk tolerance. That really guides your investment decisions. And I think Andy would have outlined that. And also your choices, whether you're a conservative, moderate, or aggressive options that you're looking for. Another thing that's important when we're looking at investing for retirement is asset allocation. That's the way you divide your money into your different investment portfolios and the different classes like the stocks and bonds, cash that I would have spoken about. And generally what we see is younger investors are the ones that typically go more aggressive. They are willing to take more risks. They have more high growth assets. And so at every stage of your life, and therefore they would go more into stocks while they're younger. But the older investors, obviously now you're looking towards retirement and you have to go safer. So you tend to look at less risky investments, and that would lead you into the area of bonds. So really it's a journey, and retirement is a journey, investing is a journey. And depending on where you start, it determines how you go about your journey.
Okay, all right. Deandra, I wanted to ask you something based on everything that you're saying there. I remember when I was a little younger and just getting into the working world and saving and everything like that. I come from a very arts background. English and that sort of thing is my background. So when it came to finance and numbers and budgeting, it was something I was very risk averse about. You know, even in terms of speaking to somebody, would I understand the terms that are being used and all of that sort of thing? If there are people out there like that, what advice do you have for them in terms of, you know, I want to learn more about investing. I want to take control of my finances, but I feel really, really shy about it. What would you say to them?
Samantha, and I would say you're not alone. There are many people out there that feel that. And you know what? There are a lot of experts that could guide you along your financial planning, your investment journey. What I would say is seek advice, seek experts in the field who could guide you on that journey. But also everything is available. So simple research. I mean, you know, you Google anything, you'd get these simple terms, right? And investments could be broken down, right? So that's why I try not to use the jargon, but it is something that is scary and is something that could get complicated. But the key here is to start early, keep at it, stick at it, consistency, discipline. And you would have mentioned budgeting. That is also a key aspect when you're looking at retirement, your income, how much you have to set aside for your expenses and what you have left over.
Right, right. Thank you very much. Suzanne, I had a question here for you based on something that Andy said. I think he was talking a little bit about the company's pension that people might be involved in. You know, he said, talk to your company and find out, you know, how much you might be getting at retirement and that sort of thing. How, if for anyone out there, can you talk a little bit about at what point I can start speaking to my HR department or whomever in terms of what I would be getting when I retire and that sort of thing? Is there any light you can shed there?
Normally, once you are on the company's pension plan, members are provided with annual statements. So you will have an idea of what is in your fund. For the defined contribution plans, where you will actually put money into the fund, and that fund will be able, at your retirement, we use that fund to purchase a pension for you. Now, you may not know what your pension is going to be until retirement time. So we know what is in the fund, and then we can tell you what your pension can be. However, we can do a projection. It may not be accurate, but we can project what your pension is going to be. Now, we tend to tell folks maybe closer to 50, 55, you want to have an idea, then you can actually look for quotations or what your pension might be. For those persons who have a defined benefit plan, where we can actually determine what your pension is going to be at retirement, you can think about the salary that you're getting now, plus the factors that they're going to use, the years of service that you have, and you can actually work out what your pension is going to be at retirement. What happens is that a lot of people are now turning away from that type of plan and using the defined contribution plan. So it's easier for people to invest in those types of plans. Again, once you are employed and your company has this pension plan, they're sponsoring it, you should actually join the pension plan. If you are leaving your employer and you're going to another one, you can actually transfer if there's the transfer clause. The government even allows now for you to transfer to individual plans. So you don't have to take your refund or take your money back. You leave your money in the fund so that you are growing your retirement income when that time comes. So my suggestion will be that you have your conversations. I think right now we sort of encourage employers to have seminars for their employees. We will actually visit our clients regularly, have discussions, do retirement planning for your staff members, those who are going to retire within the next 10 years, those who are going to retire within the next 5 years, do retirement planning with them so that they have an idea. So those who are under pension can actually start doing something to be in a better position at retirement.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to be talking a little bit now about, is there such a thing as preparing our finances for retirement, in the sense that should we start to reduce debt where possible, shift some finances around when it comes closer to the time? What can be done even as we're doing our savings? How else can we prepare? So, Andy, I wanted to come to you on that question. How do we approach our finances as we get closer to retirement in terms of debt consolidation and those sorts of things?
Well, certainly, as people go towards closer and closer to retirement, they would want to make sure that, they organize their finances in the best possible way. Some people who may have debt, as you said, may definitely want to consider whether they want to pay off those debts. Many people may want to take a debt into the retirement, and in fact, a lot of loans and so on tend to end just before somebody hits retirement. And so, as I think has been said here throughout, getting financial help will be very important at that point in time. Talking to professionals, talking to experts who are able to guide you to say, what in your specific situation could be done in order to ensure that you have the smoothest transition from the working world into the time of retirement. And so financial literacy, how you invest, how you change, what you're going to do with loans, all these things are extremely important questions. And of course, there's no one size fits all. And my recommendation would be to really seek, the advice of those that are in the know and can assist you to make the right choices so that you're fully well prepared in retirement.
And I think I wanted to ask you this question here. From the NIB perspective, the Social Security perspective, at which point can I approach you guys to find out what might be available to me from your side in terms of supporting my retirement?
Well, that's an interesting question, because from our side perspective, that might be difficult from the standpoint that we are based on contributions, based on the contributions you pay up to the point of you want to retire. And so somebody who is coming in to say, what will I get? It is not an exact science to say, well, because you still have, especially if you still have a working life ahead of you. But what we do know is that what I can say is that at the NIS, we calculate what your pension would be for a lot of persons, it comes below $3,000. $3,000 is the minimum pension that we would pay. And then there are some people who qualify for a pension above $3,000 in their own right. And that is based on their career average salary. So when we calculate your pension, because we actually do that, calculate a pension, we look at your career average salary. So the length of your career, what was the average class that you would have contributed in? And then as a rough gauge, we take about 30% of that and give you that as a base pension. And then for every group of 25 contributions you have above 750, we give you what is called an increment. And we add to that that base, right? And whatever that is calculated based on your entire career and history, that is what is now compared to the $3,000. If it is below 3,000, we give you the minimum. And if it's above, we give you what is calculated based on your career average and the number of increments you have above 750.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. James, I had the same question I wanted to apply to you just to see if you had anything to add in terms of how do we start preparing our finances to retirement? Was there anything else you wanted to add there?
Okay, well, one of the morals of the story today is that you should really start as soon as possible. And my advice is that you may not be able to afford a large amount initially, but start small, and as your career develops, contribute more and more towards annuities, towards mutual funds or whatever. So let me just start with that. In terms of figures, okay, Andy mentioned that the NIS pension will be, say, between $3,000 and $5,000 a month, depending on your contributions and your level of earnings. Now that translates into a pension, depending on your earnings, of, I'd say, between 10 and 30% for most people of their final salaries. Okay, so those who are under 10,000 a month, that 3,000 represents 30% of their salary, while others with higher salaries, the NS pension will be a little less in a percentage form. Okay. Then come, as I said before, the second tier is your pension plan. So if you think of a pension plan where members pay 5% and the company pays 5%, so you have an overall 10% contributions going into the pension plan every year. As a guide, that will give you a pension of 1% per year of service. So if you start at age 25 and you retire at 65, your pension from that source will be just about 40%, give or take, depending on how the fund performs. Obviously, if you start late and you start at 55 rather than 20, and you have 10 years of contributions, then your pension from the pension plan will only be like 10% or less. As I mentioned earlier, it's important to realize that because the company is contributing on your behalf, your savings are double what you put in. Okay, so that in itself is a tremendous return on your personal investment because the company is matching what you put in. Okay, and the next tier once again is annuities, which will attract tax relief, so that you also benefit up to 25% of you pay less. So every $100 you invest, if you get tax relief of $25, you really only invest in 75, but you're getting $100 worth of benefits for each year, kind of thing going forward. So you have to keep in mind that the NIS pension and the pension plan itself may not be sufficient to maintain your standard of living. You may not be able to get from those two sources anywhere near 100% of your salary. So obviously you have to think of other sources, as mentioned previously, annuities and mutual funds and other types of investments, rental income, and so on. The other thing I want to mention is, obviously, we all want to be debt-free by the time we retire. And my advice is that as you near retirement, do not generate any new debt, because you really want to make sure that you are debt free at retirement. And I will also encourage people not to I suppose get loans and so on for luxuries rather than necessities. I mean I prefer to borrow money in my days for a mortgage or for a car, to buy a car. The other types of loans that are around the market, which I certainly would not encourage, because it's not a necessity of life, it's more of a luxury. And I will certainly encourage that. And the other thing I will encourage in your retirement is that you may want to take up some extra hobbies or other. I mean, you mentioned that you like art. Who knows? You might become an amateur artist after you retire and sell a few paintings for a few $1,000s. You never know. So take up hobbies that you may like that may generate some income. I mean, you could, at a similar session previously, someone mentioned about baking and so on. The other things that you can do after retirement as well to help supplement your income. So keep all these things in mind, that there are other ways of supplementing income, not just savings, but there's other ways in retirement to generate some other income. You may have a house where you can rent a room or whatever. I mean, there are other ways of doing things as well to generate income after your retirement. So that, as I said, I encourage all these activities to make sure that you are in the same standard of living that you're accustomed to. And that usually means having an income of near enough to 100% of what you earned before.
Right. I think what is really coming through here is that it's important to have, as early as possible, if you can, a vision of what you would like your life to look at once you retire. Because if you have that vision in mind of what you would want your lifestyle to be, and I mean, if you don't want to be working, if you want to be traveling, if you want all of those different things, then you will know exactly how much you need to factor into saving and investing. And if you do really need to have those other streams of income, if you need to develop that hobby into a business, so if you're working or something, all of those things are very important. I think you all are just reinforcing the importance of self-awareness when it comes to your future. Would you agree? Anybody can jump in.
All those things are important. Yeah, I mean, you have to plan from early. You can't wait until your company puts out a retirement planning session when you're already in your 50s, because it might be too late by then.
Right. Okay, so I think we'll just step away from our questions a little bit, because we're getting a lot of feedback and activity in the chats and in the Q&A. So I just would want to take a look in and dive in there and see what we can how we can expand the discussion a little bit. Okay, I'll start with a question for Andy. Somebody's asking, if I have my personal individual pension, can I still qualify for NIS and government pension?
The NIS pension is insurance. You actually contribute to that, you pay your contributions, and regardless of the income that you receive in retirement, it is not affected by that. So it is something that you are totally entitled to, national insurance, and it is not means tested. What is means tested is the senior citizens pension. And so that has a maximum of $3,500. And so I said earlier that if you have $3,000 in NIS and that's your only income, then because of the means test that is applied to senior citizens pension, then you could be entitled to $2,500 at age 65 of senior citizens pension. Right, you have gone from 35 to 25 because of the income that you have. And if you have any other income, that amount will be affected. And if you have a total income of more than about 5,500, then you get nothing from the senior citizens pension. So the social insurance, that is the NIS, it is not means tested at all. You get what you earn. And then the senior citizens pension is means tested. You only get based on the level of your income.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I also have a question here. Someone is asking for an explanation, a registered annuity versus a non-registered annuity. James, would you want to take this one?
I mean, a registered annuity will attract tax relief, and a unregistered will not, and that's usually for individuals who are beyond their allowances for contributing to pension plans or annuities. So once you are within that overall limit of what you can get tax relief on, registered annuities are the way to go, because you'll get tax relief on those premiums.
Okay, thank you very much. Leandra. Yes, we have a question asking for an explanation of endowments versus annuities. Would you be able to chime in on that?
Well, annuities is basically where is like an insurance product that you contribute to, and then at the end you could, I mean, you could get it at the beginning or the end, so you get a supplement, you get a income back then. So that's how come it contributes. An endowment, and James, you could probably chime in here. It's term based.
An endowment is basically an insurance policy that if you survive to whatever age, 60 or 65 as the case may be, you may get a lump sum at that point in time. But those other types of life insurance, I want to mention that those do not track tax relief. The tax relief are for the registered deferred annuities, as I mentioned earlier. So certainly the recommendation, although you might want both, depending on your circumstances, one will be better than the other. But just keep in mind that the endowment insurances are insurances rather than a savings product. Although it could be seen as a form of savings, but it does not affect, does not attract tax relief, while the annuities will.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much. But let me ask you, is an endowment an advisable investment for someone who already has like an annuity? Would you advise that they have both?
The answer is yes. Once you have fulfilled the 2 or 3 tiers before that, the answer is yes. That's another form of savings, another form of investments, and to get something back at retirement.
Yeah.
I would like to say also that for the maturity of the endowments, you can actually pay off some of your debts because you are going to get a lump sum payment. And if you do have any debts at that point in time, you can use that to pay off your mortgage or whatever loans you may have. So if you have an annuity that will kick in on a monthly basis, you're going to get an income. So I would agree with James.
Okay, thank you very much. Suzanne, I think this one might be for you. Someone is asking whether we can make voluntary contributions to a group plan outside of the standard arrangement.
Well, group plans normally have, would allow voluntary contributions. Some plans may not, but once the trust deed and rules include that clause, yes, you can make voluntary contributions. And we have not seen in recent years that it's not included. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question here, and I'll ask it. I'm not sure who to direct it to. Is it prudent to encourage a client to stop a pension plan and open an endowment plan instead? Somebody saying that this was something that happened to someone they knew and they just wanted to find out if this makes sense.
I certainly wouldn't encourage anyone stopping a group pension plan if they have it, because as I mentioned before, you get tax relief, you get the company paying doubling your investment because they contributed the same as you. Endowment, you're on your own. Eh? There's no supplement from the company. There's no tax relief. So I would not certainly stop a pension plan to do that. But as I said before, I will certainly use endowments maybe as a further supplement to the pension plan and the annuity, but not, I wouldn't stop that to have an endowment.
Right, I understand. And just one more, a quick question. Somebody would have asked, what is the difference between the plan that's offered by one of those organizations, TISP? What's the difference between TISP and an annuity? Andy,
Okay.
would you be able, James, you can go ahead.
I think the main difference, I mean, they're quite similar in that they both accumulate whatever contributions you pay, all right? And whatever the accumulation is at time of retirement is what you get as a pension. One of the differences may well be the amount of lump sum that you are allowed to get. The lump sum under the annuity is limited to 25% of your balance, whereby under TIPS, you may get a bigger lump sum, but a smaller pension. But keep in mind that what's really important in retirement is to have a steady stream of income. Okay. I wouldn't advise people to take out, have a plan with even bigger lump sum. 25% should be enough to, as Susan mentioned, to pay off your debt and pay off your mortgages and whatever else. Okay. But what's important is that you have enough income on a monthly basis to live possibly for the next 20 years. I mean, someone retired at 65 could live another 20 years. I mean, and that's not, I mean, and the average person will probably live for at least 15. Some may die before, some may die after. But on average, you're going to live for 15 or 20 years after you retire. And that's reality. So you have to make sure that you have a steady stream of income during those 15 or 20 years.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Leandra, I have a question here that just came in. I think that you might be able to chime in on. How should inflation be factored into your retirement planning?
That's a good question, and it all goes back to what I was saying before about having your asset allocation and diversification, right? So and the different products you invest in, right? So equities tend to be a good hedge for inflation, and therefore in investing, inflation is something you always have to consider, and therefore you want different streams. So you don't just want everything in bonds, and then you want some in equities for things that happen in the economy like inflation. So equities would act as a hedge against inflation, and that is one of the products we would say to have in your portfolio. While it's riskier and it's volatile, that is one of the key benefits as well to deal with inflation in having equities in a portfolio.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I see we have quite a few questions coming in even as we're seeking to wrap up. I'm just going through the chat really quickly. Okay, I'll start with one that just came in. And this I think might be good for James. What are the best retirement options available for someone starting the planning process at a later age? So let's say maybe you're around 45, heading to 50, and you're looking and realizing that you're going to need some extra funds in.
I mean, obviously, the later you start, the more you have to save or contribute to meet whatever requirements you want to achieve at retirement. Obviously, I mean, if you start later in life, 45 or 50, it just means instead of contributing $100, $200, $200, $300 a month initially and growing as time goes by, you may need to contribute a lot more to be able to sustain your standard of living after your retirement. So that's why the purpose of this retirement planning session is to let the audience know that the earlier you start, the better. Because if you start too late, you really need to contribute quite a bit, in the thousands probably rather than the hundreds,
right,
to be able to build up a sufficient fund at age 65.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, my apologies. I was just reading through some of the questions that we're getting in. Okay, I have a question here that I would like to direct to Andy. And the person is asking, would the NIB fund be able to pay out my pension within the next, oh no, I would prefer to leave this question for another time. Okay, so I'd like to just talk a little bit more. I have a question that I wanted to ask to all of the participants. Up until this point, we've been speaking somewhat from an idealistic point of view, and we've talked a little bit in detail about, how the importance of approaching retirement as early as possible. But I just wanted to ask what I think is a little bit of a realistic question in terms of age. Some of us feel that, our salaries are only enough that we can we just have enough for the present time. How can we look at our income, our current income, in a way that we're able to budget and still prepare financially for the future? Suzanne, can we start with you?
So I would recommend that when you're planning, that you look at 1/6 of your income and put that aside for your retirement or for your savings, whatever you're doing, that you budget that and you put that aside for your planning. That would be my recommendation.
Thanks. Andy, would you be able to jump in here?
Oh, Samantha, I was actually still thinking about, and I sent you a message, the previous question about the NIS, and so that you know that I was willing to answer that question.
Sure.
In that the national insurance system is quite important to the national landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. And like many social security systems around the world, the national insurance system, no different from any other around the world, is in the place where it needs reform. And because of those challenges that we might face, and we know the importance of the national insurance system, every effort, I'm sure, will be made in order to ensure that for many years into the future, that the national insurance system remains viable. And so I could say that I am very confident that for years to come, the national insurance system will be here and will be providing insurance coverage for the most vulnerable in our society.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Andy. Because I know that it's a point of discussion that comes up quite frequently right now. So I'm very appreciative that you're able to speak on it. Suzanne, were you okay in terms of what you were contributing about how persons should consider their budgeting when they're planning for retirement? You had mentioned thinking about 1/6 of their income.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Okay, great. No, why I think that is particularly important, because again, it's something that hit home with me personally, that sometimes you look at your income and you know, there are things that you're planning or you're spending on currently, and you're like, okay, I probably just need to put X amount of dollars there, but you just can't seem to find the way. So, it's always interesting to hear perspectives of how you can approach your budgeting, that you're able to do everything that you can with what you have.
Yeah, sometimes I think it may mean that you probably one weekend not eat out or something like that, but it's a luxury. Sometimes we can afford ourselves to do certain things. So why not plan for the future and do something a little bit, hold back a little bit on one area and do something else? It all depends on the individual, but we make recommendations, we can suggest, but the individual is the one to make the decision. So if I'm giving you a recommendation and you're saying that, let me spend $500 a month on my pension, this is my future I'm looking at, and you might very well see that might be the direction that you want to go into when you start saving. And once you start doing something, it becomes a habit. And once you go down that road, you will not feel the burden. If we think about every time, this is burdensome, I will do it when I get an increase. But when you do get an increase, you find something else to do with that fund. And then that's how you go. So if you start off, as James said before, you can start small and then start increasing, and eventually you're going to meet your target. And again, the younger you are, the better your pension is going to be, the more money you're going to have in that fund that will provide you with a pension at retirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The point that keeps coming back all the time is that, it's such it's a better place to be in if you start younger. Your retirement planning starts and it goes a lot smoother. So I really appreciate that point coming in quite frequently. I have a question here for James. If your employer has a defined, or maybe it's Andy, if your employer has a defined contribution plan that allows employees to make additional voluntary contributions, is there any limit in any law or regulation that the employee can make?
I think that question we're better.
Yeah, well, I mean, usually the limit, I've seen some rules where the limit might be the same 1/6 that Susan referred to. To be honest, we really don't see too many people contributing additional voluntary contributions, but we certainly like to encourage it so that they could supplement their income. As mentioned earlier, ABCs are allowed. It's allowed for tax relief. So we certainly will encourage individuals paying ABCs up to whatever limit they may have. Some rules may have limits, some may not. They can always ask their employers if their pension plan has a limit on the ABCs, and they can contribute to whatever that limit is, or contribute whatever they wish. So certainly we encourage, people may get bonuses at Christmas time. Those bonuses could be at least partly invested in the pension plan, or in annuities, or mutual funds, or other types of investments. So you could use your bonus partly for your Christmas activities and partly for savings.
Right. Thank you very much. So we're coming to the end of our panel discussion. So I just wanted to thank everybody that took the time to contribute your question. I have one question that I wanted to hand over to Andy. Can an employer use the NIS insurance pension and add it to the company's pension and use this as the pension payable to the employee at retirement?
I think there's been a lot of discussion about that in the past. I think it refers to harmonization. James, you may be familiar. I don't know to what extent that this has garnered any traction at all, and I don't think it's something that is possible. But James, you might be able to shed any further light on that.
All I'll say is that every source of savings, whether it's the NIS or a group pension plan or annuities, sources of income in isolation, meaning that you could get all three. All right. So some people may get a pension check from the NIS. They may get a pension plan, a pension check from ABC Limited Pension Plan. They may get a check from Sagicor as invested in an annuity, and all three will be obviously in your retirement. All three will be taken into account to determine, what tax you may pay. NIS is tax-free as far as I know, but the others may be taxed depending on your overall income, if you have any other sources of income. But certainly all three sources of income are separate, and one does not affect the other. Whatever you are entitled to, you will get.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, James, in that I felt the question was like, if it would limit, but I think you might have answered it, whether it would limit the person's pension from the company because, they added to the NIS. So I would
the pension from the pension plan will cover whatever the rules say. Certainly in a defined contribution plan, it's whatever your balance will buy at the end of the day. There's some defined benefit plans that, as you mentioned, maybe harmonized with the NIS to some extent, but whatever the pension rules allow, you'll get that pension from your pension plan, and you get the NIS from the NIB.
Okay, thank you very much, James, for that explanation. So we're pretty much on the end of our discussion this afternoon. I wanted to open the floor to each of our panelists so that you could offer some final thoughts. Leandra, can we start with you?
Sure. I would just like to quote George Foreman, and the question isn't what age I want to retire, it's at what income. Therefore, I encourage everyone listening to start thinking, start planning, and start investing. Good habits are cultivated. Invest early, invest often, and diversify. Investing for retirement doesn't need to be complicated.
I really appreciate that contribution. Thank you very much, Leandra. Suzanne?
Piggyback off of Leandra. I would like to say that retirement planning is our responsibility, and therefore we should look at the investments available to us and make the necessary decisions and invest. We are open to receive any other questions that you may have that we can guide you. Sagicor has a very great pensions team, and we will be able to assist those who would need the guidance.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Andy, over to you.
Yes, you know, my mother always used to say that a drip, drip fills a bucket, you know. And, you know, what's his name? I think it's Albert Einstein said, you know, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And so I say both those things to say that, you know, earlier start early. And, you know, begin to and plan carefully for your retirement so that you will be in the best position that you could be.
Thank you very much, Andy. James?
Okay, well, I mean, without repeating what everybody else just said, I mean, obviously the main thing is to start early, start small if that's all you can afford. Increase your contributions over time as you get salary increases or other sources of income from whatever sources, and plan for your retirement in the sense that everybody wants to live in retirement at the same standard of living that they're accustomed to. Okay, so whatever your salary is, you want to put aside and have an income as close as possible to that salary. Okay, and I mentioned earlier that, you know, there are other sources of revenue that you could get in retirement, such as rental income, starting a small business, whether it's, you know, baking cookies or whatever. There are other ways of getting revenue after retirement. So you don't really have to rely only on your current sources of NIS, group pension plans, and UTs and so on. You can create your own income even after retirement, when I suppose you have more time to do these other activities. All right, and keep in mind that, you know, as I said, you could increase the amount of contributions over time. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, so you can't always start at a high level when you're young, but certainly you could increase that contributions as time goes by to meet whatever targets you have in mind for your retirement. And keep in mind that you, as I mentioned earlier, you could live 15 or 20 years easily in your retirement. I mean, people are living longer, and so you have to keep that in mind as well. And obviously, some people may depend on the children to help support them, but you can't always rely on your children. You have to make sure that you put things in place for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James. And I just want to thank all our panelists for taking the time to share with us this evening, to share their expertise, and just to reinforce so many important points to us. The biggest takeaways, at least that I would have had, is the importance of being consistent, to start as young as you can. But having said that, even if you're older, it's not too late to start, you know, and definitely if you need advice, if you need further information, seek out information, whether it's on the internet, Google is your friend, or call an organization that you're comfortable with and find out how they can help you with your retirement planning. Seeking out advice is very important. And more importantly, just don't give up on the process. Keep leaning into it. So on that note, I would like to thank our panelists once again. I would like to thank you, our audience, for staying with us for the time. We appreciated sharing all of this information with you. And I believe that in the chat, a lot of you have been asking for a copy of the recording. You can send an email to sagicorevents@sagicor.com. I think that would be the best way to ensure that you get a copy of the recording. So if you can email sagicorevents@sagicor.com to get a copy of the recording. So on that note, everybody, thank you very much for your time and have a good evening.